I'm not gonna pray that it's gonna go ahead because it probably won't. I'll be a pessimist, but
They put the Calgary one on, but then they canceled Edmonton when things got a little dicey around here.
Nikki, question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are my slides forwards or backwards?
They're the right way.
Okay, good. Because for whatever reason, when I look at it, I'll just reset my camera. Hold on. When I look at it on my end, they're backwards.
Ah,
No, they're good.
that's
You just have to
confusing.
read backwards.
So every now and again, if you see me looking over here, it's because I'm sneaking a peek at what does the slide say? Because I can't tell what it says reading backwards. I'm not one of those window decorators for the Calgary Stampede. I don't know how they do that. I really don't.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know what? It's after 12, so I think we're going to get started. And in respect of everybody's time, welcome everybody today. I know we'll still have some people popping in last minute, but if you can turn your cameras on, it would be awesome because this is a great opportunity to network as well and let Craig see your face because he's a mover and shaker in entrepreneurial circles here in Alberta. Before we begin, there's a long history that has brought us to be on this land. At NATE, we seek to learn from that history and the lessons that have come before us and to draw on the wisdom of Canada's First Peoples who have lived on this land from time immemorial. Through this land acknowledgement, we have an opportunity and responsibility to reflect on the impacts of colonialism historically and currently. Only through learning can we move forward in truth and reconciliation and to a better future together. Today, we are so fortunate to have Craig Elias, who is the entrepreneur in residence at Bow Valley College, but more than that, he is the brawn, the brains, the power behind 150 startups, as well as Innovation Rodeo. If you've attended any Founders Fridays, if you haven't, you're missing out. So email me and I'll tell you all about them. Tech Tuesdays, all kinds of things that he's got going on. And he's a great connector to opportunities and things going on. So I'm going to pass it over to Craig. And please keep your mics muted unless you're asking a question.
Cool. And then the first thing I just want to check is I want to check on volume. So Chris, is my volume loud enough? Does it need to be quieter or louder? Okay, I see a thumbs up from the guy in a purple shirt, but I don't see a name yet. Who's the guy in the purple sweater? And a beard. Can't tell. That's okay. Yes, as you heard from Cecile, I'm a bit of a connector. And the data actually says that the #1 predictor of success, whether you want to be an entrepreneur or be an awesome employee and have a really good career, the #1 predictor of success is the size of your network. So the first thing I'm going to ask everybody on this call to do is I'm going to ask you, if you're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to go to LinkedIn. Let's go find your full LinkedIn profile, including the HTTP. Okay, let's go find your full LinkedIn profile, the whole thing, including this HTTPS. Copy that LinkedIn, paste it in here, and so people can see who you are. And then what I encourage you to do, and since I haven't met many of you before, I don't know if you're one of those lazy networkers or not. I'm going to assume not, which means that when you find a couple of links in the chat, it's your job to go click on those links and just mention something about this session. So for those people that don't check their LinkedIn profile every day, at least they'll know where they actually met you. So let's just give everybody a little chance to put their full LinkedIn profile in LinkedIn and let everybody go find a couple of people they're not connected with, because I know you're not all in the same city. So this is part of the fun of having a really good network, is you want to have a network that is outside of your city, because inside a city or a school or an ecosystem, it's what I often call an echo chamber. We all say the same things to each other. And it's not until you start reaching outside of that echo chamber that you might live in, you start hearing different things, or sometimes you hear them differently and all of a sudden they resonate. So let's make sure people get their LinkedIn profile in, and once yours is in, go find a couple people, click on a link, say hello. Why am I here today? This is the reason that I'm here today. I want you to leave today's session empowered. If you've got an idea for something, I want you to leave feeling stronger about your ability to go away and implement and execute on an idea that you actually have. But here's my first question. And if you have an answer, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, and then we'll let you unmute yourself. Why do you think it is that startups fail? What's the biggest one? What's the number one biggest reason that startups fail? Does anybody want to raise their hands? So I see that good old fashioned physical raise your hands. Okay, Chris, that actually works. So Chris, what do you think is the number one reason startups fail?
Their goals tend to be too spread out, and what they're trying to accomplish is just too vast, and they're not focused enough on what they're trying to do as a startup business.
So I do agree that focus is the dirty word in entrepreneurship. I call it the F word in entrepreneurship, but it's not the number one reason people fail. I think somewhere in here, Cecile, how do they raise their hands electronically? Is there a way to raise their hands electronically in WebEx?
Yeah, down at the bottom, the little happy face thing is the reactions. You
Okay.
click on that. Oh no, that only gives you reactions. You can raise your hand beside your name on the participant thing.
So from there, you can raise your hands?
Yeah, like
Hmm.
Nikki's got her hand raised right now.
Who does? Nikki, what's the answer?
I don't know. Nobody wants your business. You didn't validate it.
Totally. That's absolutely correct. There's no market need for what it is you're actually selling. Part of the challenge we all have is that we think we have this really great idea and it's freaking brilliant, but the problem is nobody wants it. Part of this problem is what is called desirability. Is your product or service actually desirable? And it's usually not just one idea that makes a difference. It's a combination of multiple ideas or different pieces of feedback till you get the really big idea that is worthwhile. And we'll spend some time talking about that today. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to spend some time on one of my favorite startup tools. It's called the Leaner Canvas. Some of you might have heard of the Lean Canvas. We're going to talk about something even simpler and smaller called the Leaner Canvas. We'll spend some time talking about this thing called transactional velocity. One of the reasons that entrepreneurs that have a large network tend to be successful is they have this ability to pick up the phone, call, text, email almost anybody and be able to get the help they need in no time flat. I am super fortunate that on LinkedIn, I'm user 3,956. I have had on more than one occasion over 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. Every now and again, I have to take some out to make room for the next batch. So if I have some crazy ideas, all I do is I pick up the phone and call someone or text somebody and make it work. We'll talk about transactional velocity. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you a testing business ideas workshop that is free and for students. And it's this guy. So if you're not aware of this guy named David Bland, he is probably one of the most influential people in the startup space. The other person who I spent time with and I have a lot of respect for is this really cool guy named Ash Moria. Ash is the guy that came up with the Lean Canvas and now Leaner Canvas. So we'll spend some time on that. Just so you get a sense of who I am, I started out as a sales guy right after university. And I've been in sales for about 15 years. And the company I was working for admitted conducting 11 billion, that's with a B, $11 billion in accounting fraud. And now all of a sudden, nobody would buy from me. So I had my own startup and I got involved in a pitch competition held by a very famous venture capital firm called Draper Fisher Jurvetson, led by a guy named Tim Draper. And the pitch competition had a first prize of $1 million US. So I was the guy that actually entered the contest, won the entire thing, moved to Silicon Valley, lived on an island halfway between San Francisco and Oakland. And some of you have heard of Alcatraz. It is not Alcatraz. There's actually another island halfway between Oakland and San Francisco called Yerba Buena, which, if I'm not mistaken, stands for good grass. And it's attached to an island called Treasure Island. I lived a complete life of Riley while I was there. While I was down in Silicon Valley, my company was twice chosen by Dow Jones as one of the 50 most promising companies in all of North America. And I got some really cool coverage on NBC News. But then something happened. I became a dad. And I promised myself and promised my wife that I was not going to be a successful entrepreneur with a ruined marriage and dysfunctional kids. So I put in place a CEO and came back home. And I get to spend lots of really cool time with my son. We've been in scouting for quite a while. This is my son at one of his favorite scout camps. Now, in this picture is my son. And other than Nikki and Dale, who probably already know the answer, does anybody want to guess which of these kids in this picture might be my son? Anybody want to unmute themselves and guess which one might be mine? Don't be afraid. You're not going to be able to look. They've all got guns, so you're not going to be able to look at the face and go, which one looks the most like Craig? Because I'm almost always in bright orange golf shirts, no, it's not the guy in red. Karen, what do you think? Who's your guess?
Maybe the one with the water bottle.
The water bottle? No, my son's pretty healthy. He does drink a fair bit of water. He's near the guy with the water bottle. My son's the overachiever in the crowd. We want to guess who the overachiever might be? Lewis, what do you think?
I'm guessing probably one of the ones holding like close to the water bottle, the two on the right.
The guy with the two guns, that would be my son. He's got a water pistol collection everybody will be jealous of. We have water pistol fights. He's got one in each pocket, one in each hand, one down his back. He's got a Nerf gun collection that people try to borrow on occasion. He goes through bullets like there's no tomorrow because people just don't return them. But that's my son. I'm always trying to find interesting things to introduce my son to. So last year, just before COVID came along, my son and I got involved in a hackathon, and first prize was $10,000. My goal was to teach my son a little bit about how do you win competitions, and the goal was actually to come second, because second place was $5,000. The only flaw in my approach was the fact that I actually didn't think big enough, because we actually won the entire thing and got $10,000, and he got to put $14 towards a sailing trip that then got canceled, and now he instead owns a robot that he spent his money on. So after DFJ, I got into LinkedIn super early. So I'm used to 3,956 of 750 million people. I am super connected. So if as a student you want some help and you look someone up on LinkedIn and you see that we're connected, by all means, just reach out on LinkedIn and see if I can find a way to introduce you. The best time to do this is while you are a student. Because when you're a student, you can use the S card. Everybody loves to help students. So if Ash, for whatever reason, decides he wants to phone up somebody I know and goes, hi, my name is, and I'm a student, they're going to want to help. But if you're no longer a student and you can't say that, they're like, who are you? How did you get my cell phone number? Why are you phoning me? So if you ever wanted to reach out to some really cool people, best time to do it is while you're actually at NAIT, right? I've been able to spend some really cool time at a place called Babson College, which is the #1 place on the planet to go learn entrepreneurship. I've been part of a program they run called the 10,000 Small Businesses Program. I'm involved with a really big festival that hopefully myself and Cecile and Brandy are going to go down to next year in March, the three of us. It's way too much fun. The Alchemist Accelerator is one of the best accelerators there is in the world. They give you a bunch of money. You go spend 6 months. Half the people that go through that program get funded. My record's 75%, but that's an awesome place to be. And I spend most of my time as the entrepreneur in residence at Bow Valley College. And what Cecile touched on was this program called 150 Startups. And my goal is to try and find a way to help as many students at all the publicly funded schools in the province become first-time entrepreneurs. The goal is to create role models. Because once there's one person on campus who's been successful, other people want to be just like that. We take some of the people that we think are some of the most promising entrepreneurs in the province. We send them down to a 5-week, $12,000 US boot camp. Some of you might recognize this guy. This is Cole. Cole was our first guinea pig. He went down, and at the end of 5 weeks, he was one of 80 startups from 23 countries. He pitched to over 200 angel investors and VCs, and his company was picked as the most investable of all of them. Cole, yeah, totally. Now, in this picture is also somebody else. Now, Shelby has I think, an even more interesting story than Cole, because Shelby didn't make it into the top 3. She didn't get the $12,000 US scholarship. What she got to do instead was participate in a 2-week virtual 2-hour-a-day program called the Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship. It was all done virtually. And in that program, she ended up on the top 5. Well, by being in the top 5, she then got that $12,000 US scholarship. This past summer, she went through the program, came back with a 6-figure investment. And 2 weeks ago, when I was emailing her, she's telling me she's emailing me back from 10,000 feet. I'm like, 10,000 feet? What are you doing? Turns out she was on a private jet with one of the most famous venture capitalists on the planet, who's worth somewhere around $1.5 billion. So I don't know where Shelby is now, but we're going to have to, at some point, Cecile, have her tell us the story how that whole thing happened, because I haven't heard much since she sent me this picture. So this is what my job is. I have visited incubators and accelerators all over the world. So Canada, United States, Australia, and Europe. I have this awesome network of people that I tap into. One of my favorite guys is this guy, Ash, who came up a few years ago, and he helped a bunch of us learn about how do you create a lean canvas. There are now over 100 people in the province that have taken his mentor training. And what we've all learned is that while the lean canvas is good, because what it was originally designed to do was to help early stage entrepreneurs understand that falling in love with your solution is actually a bad thing. What you need to fall in love with, you need to fall in love with the problem that you're solving or the people that you're helping. And even after he built something that tried to make this happen, people would still get too far into the whole solution. So he created something called a leaner canvas. It only has 4 pieces. So when you're early in your journey as an entrepreneur, you want to figure out just these 4 things. And what we've realized is that if someone writes a business plan, or if they do this whole lean canvas, they're so emotionally attached to the work that they've done that they won't go backwards. They talk to somebody who gives them honest feedback. So they're being helpful, not being nice. They're like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to go talk to somebody else. So the leaner canvas is really designed to, how do we find a way to solve that problem? Now, you want to try and find a way to understand the lean canvas stuff sooner rather than later. And way too often what happens is people don't validate their idea by talking to total strangers early enough in the process. This is what happens. If you started today and did some of the early work, this is then the growth trajectory that you might be on. The hard part is if you launch a product or a service without doing some of the early work like a leaner canvas, you end up being 6 months later. And some people go, well, who cares if I'm 6 months late? Well, it turns out that if you're 6 months late, that you lose 1/3 of all the profit you're ever going to generate. This is the data from McKinsey that shows that just by being late, you lose the big opportunity. So instead of waiting until later, because you're going to make all these mistakes, why don't you try and find a way to validate your idea so you can get on that path today? And if you did it today instead of 6 months from now, the math simply says that you'll end up with a 50% larger opportunity by doing what I'm going to share with you today instead of waiting until 6 months from now. And the first part of what Ash talks about is, how do we understand the problem people have? How do we understand the pain that they're going through? How do we find a way to make sure we take away the thing that drives them crazy? So part of this whole piece is understanding that people don't move for positive reasons. 80% of the reason they move is for negative reasons. They want to get away from something they don't like. So what you want to try and find a way is to figure out what is that pain or problem that you solve. And then how do you find a way to help people avoid, reduce, minimize, mitigate, eliminate? It's not moving towards something like improving, maximizing, or perfecting something. A couple of weeks ago, we had this awesome guy named Bob Moesta who came and talked as part of Founder Fridays. So I'm going to pause here long enough. I don't know if somebody wants to do a quick search for Founder Fridays. You should find a link for what is called lu.ma/Founder Fridays. Put it in the chat. If you want to join us, we actually have a roundtable session tomorrow, and I will be giving away a bunch more of Bob's book. And he's all about that 80% of the reason people buy from you is because they're moving away from something else. That's called the push part of this equation. What you're trying to find a way to then do is to be able to have a really good value proposition or a reason someone wants to become your customer. That's the last 20%. That's the pull. The way I hear this described on occasion is you want to make sure that you're a painkiller, not a vitamin. So it is around trying to figure out what's the problem people have and how do you take away that problem, or how do you minimize that problem? That's the first part of whether you know if your idea will fly, because if it's solving a real problem, you're much more likely to be successful. The next thing that is really important is way too many entrepreneurs go, we have no competition. We're doing something nobody else is doing. Unfortunately, that's not quite the case, because competition isn't just someone who does the exact same thing that you do. Competition is all the different ways that somebody can solve the same problem. So one of the things you need to think differently about is not who are my competitors, but what is my competition? And I want to give you an example. Let's use the example of jewelry stores. So let's pretend we, all of us, I don't know how many are on this call, 23, 24, 25 of us, all 25 of us own a jewelry store on White Avenue between 99 and 109th Street. And oh, by the way, we're all on the sunny side of the street. We're all on the north side of the street. So if we all, 25 of us, own a jewelry store that does $5 million in revenue on the same street, what do we compete against? We want to guess? Dominique, we all own jewelry stores. We're all on White Avenue on the north side. Do we compete against each other, Dominique?
The other businesses on White Ave.
What other kind of businesses, Dominique?
Ice cream shop.
Ice cream shops, maybe. But here's the question. Who spends money on jewelry? Men, right? More than women in general. But when do men spend money on jewelry, Dominique?
Birthdays.
Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, Mother's Day, all those different occasions. Whenever we want to say to someone, I'm sorry, or I love you, what could a guy spend money on instead of diamonds or jewelry? I'm going to pick on you again, Dominique. What could I spend money on instead of diamonds and jewelry?
Flowers.
Flowers, yes. I saw someone said chocolate. I think I saw somewhere in here was perfume, right? Cars, purses, shoes, pets, trips. So we always have some form of competition. It's not always people do the exact same thing we do, but they solve the same problem. Now, the one on the bottom right-hand corner, that is a place called San Sebastian, Spain. In San Sebastian, Spain, there are more Michelin-rated restaurants than anywhere else on the planet. It's my 10-year anniversary. So I saved up to take my wife to San Sebastian, Spain for our 10-year anniversary. I found the most expensive hotel, right on the beach with an amazing view. And like any really good husband, what did I make for dinner for my anniversary? Norman, what did I make for dinner for my anniversary? You want to guess? Any guesses?
Steak.
Steak would be a really good guess, but no. You know what I made for dinner? I made reservations. This is Zubera. It's a one-star Michelin-rated restaurant. This was our this is our way of getting into Michelin and rated food. By the time we left, we had dinner at this place called Arzak. Arzak is was back then the number 16 rated restaurant on the planet. So we always have competition, but competition comes in multiple flavors. So competition might be people that are exactly the same as us, but do something very similar. But competition is also all the different ways that people can solve the problem. In this case, it's what's most prevalently used. And then the other way I think about competition is what's the most expensive way to solve this problem. I've shared this for a while. This is an example of a lady named Julie. Julie is an explorer. For fun, one day, her and her boyfriend, now husband, rode to Australia from the United States through 2 hurricanes. And she decided she was going to create a company that has ocean-going robots that measure and sense all the stuff in the oceans. And what she realized when she came to me to be part of a pitch competition to get some coaching, she realized that her competition is all the other ways to solve the problem. It's not just direct competitors, other drone companies, which she can try and find a way to be better than, but it was different ways the problem she can solve to be different than. And it turns out that what is very prevalently used is all these navigation buoys all over the planet. Well, she's different than those. She also realizes that today a lot of the work is done on research ships. And if I remember the story correctly, a research ship cost $18,000 an hour to run with a bunch of scientists on it. So Julie's realized, where do I want to go? I want to go chase the portion of the market that's spending the most money and tell people how they can actually save money. So Julie was getting ready for a pitch competition in Calgary. First prize is $100,000. The day before she comes to Calgary, she sends me this picture because she was in a pitch competition in Vancouver and she won that $100,000 pitch competition. She got on a plane that night. She came to Calgary. She pitched in a second $100,000 pitch competition. What do you think happened with the second pitch competition? Amanda, what do you think happened with that second $100,000 pitch competition? Amanda can't find the mute button. Let's go to Daryl. Daryl, what do you think happened to her when she was in the second $100,000 pitch competition? She won it. She actually did. She won 2 different $100,000 pitch competitions in less than 24 hours. And all she really did was had a really good grasp of what is the competition. If you want to learn a little more about this, the way that I learned about it, yes, I've read the book. It's like, I don't know how many, 250 pages or 250 pages. Let me go read this. Hold on a second. 227 pages. Yes, I've read the book, right? But you don't need to read the entire book. You just need to read this article. It's $10. And it helps you understand the difference between competitors and competition. So make sure you understand the problem. Take the problem away. Understand all the alternatives that people are using today. And how do you find a way to categorize the different forms of competition? And how do you go chase that portion of the marketplace that is spending the most money where you can make the biggest difference? Now, when you go out to interview people to validate some of the assumptions, there are very often 2 different types of people you can talk to. You can talk to the customer or you can talk to the user. The customer is very often the person in the company or the parent that pays for it. The user might be the employee or the spouse or the child that actually uses it. So who wants to guess whose opinion matters most? Dawn, whose opinion matters most? The user or the person paying for it? I can see you're off mute, but for some reason it's not working. No, it's not the user that matters. It's the opinion of the customer, the person who's paying. It's their opinion that matters more than the person that's actually using it. So you also need to have a really good understanding of your customers. You want to get laser focused on who your customers actually are. You need to understand three primary things about a customer. First one is geographics, right? Where do they live? Where do they work? Where do they play? Sorry, that's demographics. Geographics, demographics. How big, how old, and how rich. So what's the target age you're looking for, whether it's company size or individual? I would argue you get no more than a 15-year gap that's your target market, because otherwise what happens is the language you use doesn't resonate. It's like if I use the word baler, because we all live in Alberta and we see these bales of hay when we drive all over the place, you're going to assume if I use the word baler, it's something that makes bales of hay. But if you, instead of living in Alberta, lived in Miami and owned a boat, your example of a baler wouldn't be something that makes bales of hay, it would be something that takes water out of a boat. And if you happen to live in a crime-ridden town, the term baler isn't about how do you get water out of a boat, but it's all about how do you get yourself out of jail. What if you have a customer that's stubborn? We're going to talk about stubborn customers because we're going to talk about this group called early adopters. They're the non-stubborn customers. Those are the ones that we want. So demographics, how big, how old, and how rich is the way I generally break them down. Geographics, where do they live, work, play, or learn? But then the really important thing is to also understand their psychographics. What are their aspirations? How do they want to leave the world a better place? What are their values that they're not willing to give up in order to be successful? And what are their interests? What are the things they do to pass away the time? Now, we all have a hypothesis. We believe our customers will be this, but until we go out and talk to people, there's no way we'll know the truth. So we have to find a way to run experiments.
Right.
We have to validate our assumption. Yes, Cecile.
Zenaida has a question. I thought just
Sure, what's the question?
I had a question, but then actually by listening, you just answered it. So I'll pass now. Thank you.
So ask me the question anyway, and let's make sure maybe I have more detail that can be helpful.
Well, no, because you were speaking mostly about business ideas. You were not quite narrowing it to a product or anything in specific, but then you start narrowing it to like a product specifically, and that's how you answered my question. Because I was just getting confused. That's all.
Cool. So yeah, and Cecile, thank you for that. So I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to the chat. I'm paying attention to people that have their video on and making sure I'm reading my slides backwards. So thank you, Cecile. If one more comes up, don't be shy. Let me know. So to run experiments. Now, this is something that I've learned from a guy named Adam Burke. And Adam Burke does this at a very, very high level. I'm not quite as high a level. I'm just going to run an experiment because I want to learn. But what Adam says is before you run an experiment, you should document your hypothesis so you can see how wrong you were, or maybe how right you were. And your hypothesis really is how many people, right, of what type will do what within what time frame for what reason. So the idea is you want to write down some sort of a hypothesis. I believe that I can get at least 10 people in this room to conduct 27 interviews because it will help them avoid building a product that nobody wants. So when I do a kickoff weekend for the summer program for 150 startups, I made this off-the-cuff comment once to some students that you need to do 27 interviews because that's what you need to be statistically relevant. I was amazed how in one afternoon, this is pre-COVID, how I was amazed how in one afternoon, all these people went away and did all these interviews because I told them you had to get to 27. That was part of the hypothesis, okay? These free-form customer interviews are what you need instead of surveys, but you have to be really careful when you interview people that you don't encounter something called the say-do gap. People start up on one side. This is what they'll tell you. If you ask the wrong questions, they'll say something. But the problem is they don't do what they say. This is what's called a say-do gap. You encounter this say-do gap When you ask questions about the future, would you ever buy this? Would you ever use this? Would you? Could you? Those are the questions that get you in trouble. So in order to make sure your idea is going to fly, you're not allowed to ask questions about the future. You're only allowed to ask questions about the past. Now, some of you are probably thinking, I don't need to interview people. I'm just going to do a survey. Well, I will tell you, surveys suck. Because until you get past the first 27 or 30 people, you don't even know what are the right questions to ask. And sometimes you want to dig a little deeper into the answers that people give you. So you need to get out of your comfort zone. And you need to go talk to total strangers. You can't talk to your classmates, your instructors, your family, your friends, because they're all going to be nice and tell you your idea is really good. You should go do something. We need to talk to people who are going to give you the truth, their version of the truth. Now, you can come to me and I can tell you that your idea sucks. But David, does my opinion matter? If you come to me with your idea and I tell you your idea sucks, does my opinion matter?
Are you the customer?
Oh, really good question. Yes. Only if I'm the customer does my opinion matter. Otherwise, my opinion doesn't matter. But the really important thing is we need to make sure we ask the right questions. And this is one of the biggest things I've gotten out of the time I spent with Ash. It took me 2 years and going through his program multiple times to get some very specific questions that allow you to fill in the largest amount of information on the canvas while not taking a whole lot of time doing it. So first of all, you have to ask the people you're going to interview, have you ever had this problem? Have you ever had a problem sleeping at night? Have you ever had a problem with a stinky hockey gear making your house smelly? Have you ever had a problem with chemicals underneath your kitchen sink? If they don't have the problem, their opinion doesn't matter, even though they might be your customer. So here are the questions. First question is, when did this problem begin to happen? What we're trying to learn is, what was the trigger that all of a sudden made someone say, hey, I need to think about doing something different about this? When they went to look for a solution, what was the desired outcome they were hoping to accomplish? What were they trying to get? Figure out what's that desired outcome. Ask them, what are all the different things you looked at as ways to solve the problem? What were some of the alternatives that you looked at? Like if I want to get from Austin to Dallas, I can fly, drive, take a bus, ride my bike, or take a car. So you want to figure out what were the different things they looked at, because those are all the different forms of competition. What you then want to figure out is, what did they pick? What was the one they ended up going with? When they picked all those different things, you know, they picked one, but then understand what made them pick that one. What was the value they got out of choosing that solution? And the way you understand this is because people will use verbs. So this is a big, I'm calling it a secret, but a tip. When people use verbs to describe the value of what they get out of using something, that's value. When they use verbs, bigger, faster, cheaper, happier, warmer, we're looking for verbs to describe the value. Then we want to figure out, how much did you pay for that solution? Because we don't need to be like a lot of entrepreneurs go, it cost me this much to make it, I'm going to sell it for that much. But that's not the best way to grow your business. You want to try and find a way to have the largest profit margin possible, because you grow faster when your gross margin is higher. So use some sort of value-based pricing. Understand what's the form of competition that's chosen the most or the most expensive, and how do you find a way to be cheaper than that? You also then want to ask people, how happy are they with their current solution? So a really cool lady named Olivia Wong lives in Vancouver. Her perspective is that when you ask this question, that if people are an 8 or higher, happy with what they have, they're not very likely to change. So only when there's a 3-point difference, which means they need to be at least a minimum of a 7, if not lower, sorry, maximum of a 7, if not lower, in order for them to actually change. We then want to ask some bifurcation questions, and I'll come to bifurcation questions in a minute. But then if this person is perfect, the last question you want to ask is, where do I find more people just like you? You found the right guy or gal? How do you go find the rest of them? So I'm going to explain to you bifurcation questions, and I'm going to use an example. The sticky hockey gear example. I got a phone call from a guy in Edmonton one day, who phoned me up and heard my name from a banker, says, I'm really good at stuff like this. He says, but I've got this really cool piece of hockey equipment that makes hockey gear dry faster so that houses aren't as stinky because kids play hockey. And I'm like, well, who's the customer? He says, well, parents are the customers. And I'm like, no, parents aren't the customer. We need to focus. We need to ask a bifurcation question. We need to ask the question of, is it the mom who's the customer or the dad who's more likely to be a customer? So if you've got kids who play hockey and their gear is stinky and makes the house smell, bifurcation question, mom or dad, who's most likely to be the customer? Mom or dad? You can put it in the chat if you want. I'll pay attention to the chat for a minute. Okay.
Mom,
Moms. Why moms?
because they got to clean up.
Yeah, they hate having stinky homes. So we know it's moms. So we have one bifurcation question. It's moms. Okay, good. So now we know it's moms, and we know they have kids that play hockey. The question is, are these kids teenagers? So 13 plus or 12 and under? So we focus on moms with teenagers or kids that are 12 and under. We can only pick one. What do you think it is? Teenagers, yes, because there's way more body odor. Cecile, so I will have slides, and I actually have a question for people that are on this call. I can give you my slides as a PDF. You can have them either 2 slides to a page or 4 slides to a page. Does anybody have a preference? 2 slides to a page or 4 slides to a page in the handouts? 2 slides to a page. Yeah, I think it makes the text easier to read because it's bigger. Okay, so we asked our second bifurcation question. We know it's moms, teenagers. Now, here's question number 3. Question number 3 is, do they play hockey 3 times a week or more, or 2 times a week or less? How often do those kids play hockey? Two times. Someone says 2 times. The answer is 3 times, but here's the reason why it's 3 times. Because the challenge is that if your kid only plays hockey twice a week, you can use the regular method and it will dry pretty naturally, right? Hold on a second. My neighbor's asking for help. So I'm just going to say yes. Done. Okay. But if you're playing hockey 3 times a week, the gear doesn't dry in time for the next game. So yes, we know it's moms with teenagers who play hockey 3 times a week. Now, there's one more bifurcation question I should ask that will help me understand who's most likely to become my customer. What might be a different question I can ask to figure out who's not going to become my customer? What's other question? Think about hockey gear. What could be a 4th question? Position of the player. That's a good question. So the only problem with that position of the player is it's not bifurcation. It needs to be only 2 options. Because what you want to do is you break the audience. By just asking 3 questions, we've gone down to that 12.5% of the audience, right? Where else can people dry hockey gear other than the house? You can put it in the chat. Outside in the winter, that's not going to work very well, Dawn. Where else are you going to dry your hockey gear? In your garage. So the next question might be, do you have an attached garage, or do you air your hockey? Because if you do it in the garage, nobody cares. Ways to interview. Synchronous is the way you want. In person, Zoom, phone. You want to make sure at least the first 30 are done that way. Maybe after you've got 30 down and you see a pattern, maybe then you'll use surveys or email, but not until you get the first 30 down. You can use Google Forms. You can use SurveyMonkey. The really cool thing is that when you're finished, when you put the answers in a spreadsheet, it allows you to dissect the audience and figure what's the portion of the marketplace I want to go after. Someone said, what do I do with difficult customers? We avoid them. We're only after the portion of the marketplace that is what will be called an early adopter. Who are the people that are most likely to change in the next little while? So this is something I figured out a long time ago, back in 2002. People are in this buying mode of what I call status quo. They're happy. They see no reason to change. Then one day, all of a sudden, they experience an event. Now, all of a sudden, they want to change, and they're now into something called the window of dissatisfaction. These are the people that we want to go after. Who's had an event and is unhappy with the status quo? That's what those are the ones we focus on. What happens is very often people have a second event. Now, all of a sudden, they can afford to look at something because they have time or have more money. Now they're in this buying mode of searching for alternatives. But just because somebody wants your product or service or can afford your product or service doesn't mean they're going to buy, because there's something missing. And I'll give you an example. How many of you know what this might be? Anybody know what that is? Put it in the chat. What is this? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, someone says an iPod. You're super close. This is the first iPhone that ever came out. The first model, not the first one off the line. So when iPhones come out, I'm a technology guy. I love to be an early adopter. I find it on Amazon, $660 US. It only works on a GSM network because I think back then it was only Verizon. Fido is a GSM network. I found some software to hack into this thing. I can make it work in Canada, and they'll ship to Canada. So there's nothing that prevented me from buying this, but something prevented me from buying this. When I first saw this phone, $1,000 Canadian, why do you think I couldn't buy this phone? Anyone want to guess why I couldn't buy?
No shipping available? Oh.
My wife. Do you know why? Because my wife is Scottish. We don't throw anything away. My wife says, it's really nice, dear. What are you going to do with your old phone? Couldn't buy it. And then what happened about 3 months later? My son found my wife's really nice Motorola flip phone, and he broke it in half. I went to my wife. I said, here, dear, you can have my really nice Sony Ericsson phone. It has 10 days of battery life. So people need to have this third event where all of a sudden they can justify the purchase to somebody else. It's always based upon these events. So we're after the people that are in this window of dissatisfaction. I figured this out about business to business consumers or customers. McKinsey figured out the exact same thing. Okay, for business consumers, what happens is you've got this loyalty loop where people just keep going around and around and around this loyalty loop that they have here until all of a sudden they have an event, right? That event creates interest, and then they create this initial consideration set. This applies to almost any industry in any geography. Beth, who's no longer at GE, says, doesn't matter if you're selling refrigerators or jet engines. It applies. But the hard part is, just because there are people that want to become your customer, and these are the reasons they want to become your customer, this is how you're going to help them. This is how they justify their purchase to themselves and other people. But the hard part is there's also all these forces on the other side of the equation. All the things that are preventing people from becoming your customer. So you need to figure out, what are all these things that prevent people from becoming my customer? How do I find a way to take away all these hurdles? When people are motivated, you want to give them the most amount of work on the front end of the buying cycle, because if you leave it till later, they're not motivated enough to go away and do something about this. There's a really cool guy named BJ Fogg. He calls these things motivation waves, where people have waves of motivation and say, oh, I'm going to solve this problem. But then if it gets too hard, they don't solve it. They wait until the next motivation wave. Sometimes it's bigger than the last one. Now I'm really going to solve the problem. But it becomes too hard to do something with it. They don't have enough time, don't have enough money. They leave it till later. Then they have another motivation wave. So there are all these things that get people motivated. How do you find a way to take advantage of the Motivated people, not the stubborn ones. I forget who asked that question. So BJ Fogg gets it. These are all the motivators. Okay? These are the things that drive people to change. But just because they want to change, they have to be able to change. So when we focus on the target market, they need to have these things. I tend to focus on money, authority, influence. I'm focused on those people. Those are my customers. Okay? And it needs to be something easy for them to do. So these early adopters that we're after, it's not the whole market, or even those that have a problem, or even the ones that have a problem you can reach. It's the people that actually are motivated to solve this problem. There's a bunch of really cool resources you can take advantage of. So up at Edmonton, really cool guy. Zach, I've forgotten Zach's last name. What's Zach's last name, Cecile? Storms.
Storm.
Thank you. Zach Storms. Awesome place to go networking. They used to do in-person events. I'm sure they will at some point soon. Lots of really cool people going there. You can do virtual events through Rainforest. If you want to get started and you need some help, one of the best resources in the province is BusinessLink. Their head office is in Edmonton. They're there to help startups get started. If you need money, if you've got something and you want to find a way to get some money, there's a really cool program called Futurepreneur, but you don't spell it with the E in future. It's Futurepreneur, or I don't know how they pronounce it. The only thing is you have to be under 40 to get funding. Got a really good idea? Got a business plan? They give you funding and some money. But you can't use, some funding and a mentor. You can't use the funding for research. The idea is you're at the stage now where you're ready to generate revenue. Lots of really cool startup supported Startup Edmonton. They have lots of really good programs. For tech startups, if you're in the tech space specifically, Innovate Edmonton. And I have a ton of different resources that are available on the website for 150 startups. If you want to be able to do your financial analysis in less than 20 minutes, spreadsheet, video, instructions how to do that. You want to do a really good job of nailing your pitch because you want to be as good as Julie. They're filling a form, there's a video and some slides on exactly how to do that. The last thing I want to talk about was sort of this next step. We know people want this problem solved. We know who the early adopters are, but now we need to test our idea. Actually, the idea that we have for our product or service. And David will help those that are interested when they participate in this program understand there are certain assumptions that we have that are important to our business that we really don't have enough evidence. And we can't just use one method to go solve that problem or understand whether or not our idea is any good. So this book is full of, and I think my favorite page is it 92 and 93? It lists, let me see if I can find these two pages. I want to say it's 9, there it is. I like 98 and 99. There's a whole sequence of events, experiments you can run to validate your idea. And if this is something that you're interested in, I'm actually looking for 20 students for each day who want to participate in this. It's totally free. It's 11 o'clock till 1:30. And what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to have entrepreneurs with actual ideas who want feedback on their idea. And then what I want to do is I want to have students learn by doing something. Because I'm a big believer the best way to learn is to do something. If we do this for our own business, our bias gets in the way. But if we do this for somebody else's business, we'll learn the process. And once we've learned the process, then we can apply to our own business. So if you would like to be one of those students that wants to take this for free, that's where you want to go register. But here's my only ask, and some of you might already be at that form. What I say at the very top of that form in all caps, bolded and underlined, is do not register if you're not 100% completely committed and absolutely going to be there. So one of my biggest pet peeves is when people don't pay for things, they sign up for stuff and don't show up. today, I think, would be a classic example. How many people registered, Cecile?
We actually did pretty well there, dude, just so you know. We had 34 register.
Wow.
And we got 26 in here, including you, so
That's
25.
a pretty good show up rate. I don't see that very often. So maybe Nate's students are better. Some of the students that I've seen in other places.
Oh,
So
we
yeah,
absolutely are better.
I totally agree. If you sign up, my only ask is show up. All right. Does someone want to see if they can type that into the chat just so we've got it? People can just click on a link for those that. So it's lu.ma. It's the platform I use for all my events. Testing-business-ideas with a capital. Dale's already put it in. Does someone want to click on Dale's link and make sure it works?
It does work.
It was. There we go. Perfect. That's what I came to talk about. 4 minutes to spare. Does anybody have questions?
William had a question.
William, what's the question?
What's a good way to think about really how broad of an audience we should start with when we want to start conducting these experiments or validating interviews?
It's a really good question. I'm a fan of starting broad. So go talk to a bunch of different people. And then when you start, what you'll start hearing is you'll start hearing a certain subset of people are the ones that have the problem and have spent money solving the problem. So I'm a believer of being broader rather than narrower to start, because someone says, oh yeah, I'm just focused on teenage boys that are 5 feet tall, blue eyes, blonde hair, and size 10 feet. That's way too small. If you're wrong, you don't know where you could be right. And now you have to do that a whole experiment a whole bunch of different times. One of the things that I do with a lot of my students, especially when they're in my on-campus business idea competition called Venture Quest, I give them $500. In fact, if you're picked by your school as one of the top 2 or top 3, you get to go through a program. I will pay you to run Facebook ads. I will give you money to run Facebook ads. So you can use those Facebook ads to figure out where are you getting the most traction. Moms, dads, men, women, teenagers, old people. So I'm a believer of starting broad, but with the goal of asking questions to figure out which portion of that marketplace should I be focusing on. And that's the reason for asking bifurcation questions. Did I answer your question?
To that, specifically the marketplace, just kind of thinking about Bob Moester's demand side sales. The idea that I have is a little bit both demand side and also supply side. Is there a general rule of thumb on what to focus on first?
Focus on the demand side. See, where just because you can make something doesn't mean you should build it. Maybe people don't want it because it's not desirable. Maybe you can't make enough money at it, which means it's not viable. And just because it's feasible and you can make it doesn't mean you can make money at it or people even want it. And that's another one of those mistakes that so many entrepreneurs make. I've got this idea, let's make something, see someone wants it. That's the last of 3 steps. The way I think about this, and I learned this from some of my time at Babson College, is how do you spend $50 on something, testing an idea, before you spend $500? How do you spend $500 before you spend $5,000? And how do you spend $5,000 before you spend $50,000? I'm just going to have a quick look. I'm going to see if I can actually put in the chat the link to my slides. I'm going to find a link. Hold on. I think I have a Dropbox link I can go and get. So don't go away.
Okay, and if you have time, Norman has a question as well.
Yeah, what was the question?
Yeah, so my question is about the say-do gap.
Yeah.
And as you have mentioned that we shouldn't be asking future questions, right?
Correct.
But is it good to give them a glimpse of the future, that what we are going to do? Like,
no,
we are going to solve any problem.
So in the early days, we're validating the problem first. Once you validated the problem, then you can collect their information and say, can I reach out to you later when I'm ready to talk about what I'm selling? Then you can do some customer validation interviews, totally different. And during the customer validation piece, yes, you can talk about the product, the service, all the rest of that stuff. But when you're trying to validate the problem, you need to focus on just one thing at a time. You need to go focus on that piece, right? I'm going to find this. I think I can get this link. Hold on. Tech Sales Tuesday. Oh, no. Wrong one. let me just go back. I want to make sure I put the link in here before I do this. And the hard part is, on this side of me is my Windows machine where I run my meetings. And on this side is my MacBook Air where I do all my work. Right now I'm in the meeting on my PC, and learning how to navigate the PC is hard, even with my right hand, when I'm so used to doing things in a Mac way. But hold on a second, I'm going to get there. I want to find 2021, and then on we go. Will it fly? Let me just make sure I get you the one that's got two slides per page. Right mouse, copy Dropbox link, and let's go put that in the chat. Let me go find it in the chat to everyone. Control V. Let's see if this works. Does someone want to click on that link and just make sure it goes straight to my PowerPoint slides for today? Now, some of you are like, why didn't you give me the slides on the beginning? You did that on purpose, because when you write stuff down, you're more likely to remember it. Okay, that perfectly works. Okay. So, oh, good. So Dale's done. Yeah, Dale's done this. It's one of my favorite exercises. And what David's really helped me understand is that the question always was, how do you test the riskiest assumption to your business? And I heard that for years, never really understood what is the riskiest assumption to my business. And going through the David plan stuff really helped me understand, what do I test first? What do I test second? What do I test third? Right? Somebody had a question. What type of responses validate an idea to get killed? So if people say they don't have the problem, if nobody has the problem, that kills an idea. If it turns out that people aren't spending much money solving the problem and your solution costs more than the competition, that's the way an idea gets killed. Now, it just means that maybe you need to find a way to do what's called pivoting. And I have this awesome story that I love to tell about a guy, and I forget his name now, but he had prepared for years to go end up on the North Pole, be the first man to end up on the North Pole. That was his goal. He's got this ship full of supplies. He's got all these people ready to go. And 2 weeks before he leaves, he hears that somebody else got to the North Pole before him. What's he going to do now? Got all these people and all these supplies. He needs to pivot. Karan, can you unmute yourself on a phone? What's the pivot? What did he do? What was his pivot? Do you want to guess?
Dominique said, go to the South Pole.
Go to the South Pole. That's exactly what he did. He ended up being the first man to ever be on the South Pole. That's a pivot. So it just means that maybe it's not desirable and it's not viable. We need to either go solve a different problem, solve either a different problem for the same customer, or find a different problem. Sorry, find the same problem, but find a different customer for this problem. And sometimes you just need to go farther upstream where people are spending more money to do something like this. Go to the South Pole. Okay. Chris wants to ask a follow-up to his first question. Chris, what's your question?
Hi, Craig. So I'm wondering, the initial question I asked you is I was asking about people that are stubborn, customers that are stubborn.
Yeah.
They recognize that a problem exists, but they refuse to spend the money to try and fix it because it will affect their bottom line at the end of the day. Like, they're still making money. My idea kind of deals with theft in liquor stores. So they're still making money off of sales in liquor stores, but they've got this big theft problem that's occurring in their stores that they want to do the bare minimum to solve.
So until the problem gets perceived to be bigger, it's not going to happen. So if someone drives a truck through the store and steals $5,000 worth of the most expensive liquor that they've got, it's not going to be a problem. Until their insurance premiums are so high they can't afford them, it's not going to be a problem. So we simply need to figure out where are they on the scale of 1 to 10 with what they're using today. If they're less than a 7, then we can have a conversation to say, what would it take for you to solve this problem? The dilemma needs to be, they need to understand that the return on their investment is worth the effort, not just the money. So it's going to cost me $10,000 to install something to solve a $2,000 problem. Doesn't matter. The other thing, other than size and likelihood of happening, is how often it happens. If theft happens once a month, they don't care. If it happens every day, they're much more likely to care. So we simply need to find people that are motivated. Now, it turns out, if you are trying to solve this problem for liquor stores, we need to find a way to talk to people who either A, just had a change in ownership, because that guy or gal who's now new in the job wants to make things happen differently, or something else happened, maybe to a competitor. Maybe the liquor store down the road had a really big problem, and maybe an employee got hurt in the process. Now it's like, shit, I need to solve this problem. So it doesn't always have to happen to them. It can happen to somebody just like them. And the term for that is called propinquity. Propinquity, P-R-O-P-I-N-Q-U-I-T-Y, propinquity. Propinquity is the impact of nearness. Geographical nearness is one of them. So it may turn out the liquor store down the road gets hit. Maybe you go to the liquor stores around the area. Some really good real estate agents, when one house sells, they're going to go to all the homes around. Why are they doing that? Well, it just turns out that the reason I stay in my neighborhood is because the neighbors across the road are so good. They've got 3 girls. We get along like a house on fire. They leave. And if I don't have the same connections to people in my rest of my neighborhood, that's the push that says, I now want to leave. Now what am I going to go do? Does that help, Christian?
It's so what everything you've described in like your initial sort of evaluation of the situation, it all has happened. And like I used to work, so I'm really biased because I used to work for the liquor company where it was really, really bad. And so they'd recognized it, but we always kind of had this gripe with the company that it was like they kind of spent 2 years pretending they didn't have a problem, even though the police were telling them they had a problem at the same time. And then they did the bare minimum to try and solve the problem when they finally admitted they had a problem.
Well, and that's where we want to try to find a way to figure out how are people solving the problem the expensive way. I'll give you an example. I live in Calgary, right next to a dog park called Egworthy. I live on the top, right near the top part of the park. There is this road that has got more potholes than you can possibly imagine. It is the worst freaking road on the planet. It is driven on thousands of times every single day. Like, it's going to cost them millions of dollars to fix this problem. What did they do? They lowered the speed limit to 20 kilometers an hour. So this is why we always have to say, yes, there are some people that are solving the problem cheaply. They're not the ones that are our customers. There are some that will solve the problem in a more expensive way. How do we figure out who they are? Maybe it's the type of owner. Maybe they own a multiple stores instead of just one. But there's always a subset in the marketplace that is farther to the right that wants the best solution. They make decisions based upon values, not based upon cost or based upon price, but they value employees. So like, my employees are at risk. I'm solving this problem not because monetarily it makes sense, but from a values perspective, it makes sense. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that was really helpful.
For those that want to get a little extra help, you might go, oh, I'll find you and I'll email you. Here's the reason you don't want to email me. I have 220,000 unread emails in my inbox. So if you really want my help, here's the secret. Is Nikki still on the call?
Yeah,
Nikki,
of course I am.
Nikki, what's the way they reach me?
You send him a text.
Text message. So let me go back. I'm going to put my slides back up because if you didn't see them the first time around, that's the piece of information that you need. Here's the only challenge. My day starts at 5:30. I turn into a pumpkin at 9. So if you text me after 9 o'clock, odds are I'm not going to text you till the next morning. And I'll try not to text anybody before 7 because I'm assuming as students, some of you might still be in bed. Okay, so if you want to spend some time, like between 5:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm free almost every day. We'll find some time. So if you want some specific help, all you have to do is what, Nikki?
Send a text early in the
Send a
morning.
text. And if you don't get an answer in like 12 hours, just do what my son does and send me a second text and it's 3 question marks. Hello, are you going to answer my texts? All right. Does anybody have something they were hoping we would get to today that we didn't get to? Anybody got something specific they want to take away that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Well, I would just like to say that Craig is someone you want to know. And if you have an idea, he's the guy that will help you do it. So I just encourage everyone to take advantage of this.
Cool. So I'm going to try and engage some people that I didn't hear from. So Karen, can you unmute yourself for a second, Karen?
Hi.
What's your biggest takeaway from today? What's the big thing you took away from this session?
I think the networking part, to be successful, you have to network, you have a bigger network. And
Norman, what was your big takeaway from today?
The whole lecture, I would say.
The whole lecture. You don't have a favorite part? Not one?
No, yeah, the favorite part would be about the links that I got from this session, startup TNT and all that. But learning so much about questioning and thinking how I should, that's what got me.
Cool. William, what was your big takeaway from today?
I need to conduct at least 28 interviews to be an
Yes, you. But yeah, you and 27 more. Okay. Nikki, have you heard this presentation before?
Yeah, I have.
What did you take away from this version versus the version you might have heard or seen before?
Well, like honestly, the part about being a painkiller and not a vitamin is really stood out to me this time a lot.
Cool. Focus on the customer, yes, not the user, the customer. Cecile, is there anything you were hoping I would spend some time on? We didn't get to it all today.
Nope, you covered it all. I'm very happy woman.
Very cool. Good luck, everybody. Stay healthy. Don't be shy.
Thanks so
Send me a
much,
text
Craig.
if you want some help.
Everybody have a great
Okay.
afternoon. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank
You're very
you.
welcome. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you, Craig.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Craig, so much. Bye-bye.